Welcome to Blueprint to Billions, Leverage and Legacy in Apartments.
Welcome back to Blueprint to Billions, where legal strategy meets the real estate scale. HUD attorney and multifamily housing strategist Terry Bruner has spent his career guiding developers, nonprofits, and investors through complex housing transactions with a focus on building both legacy and leverage. I'm Evan Mack, and today's episode is all about how smart sponsor structures their deals. If you're building a HUD-backed portfolio, the legal entity structure, partnership terms, and risk protection you choose now can shape your success for years. This is Structuring the Deal, how smart developers lower risks while scaling up. Terry, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Evan, how's it going?
What's going on?
Good.
So when a new developer brings you a deal, what's the first thing in their structure that throws up that red flag or earns a quiet nod of approval?
It's a big question, and lots of answers. So let's take the red flag one first.
Let's do it.
I think when a new thing comes, new developer comes, the first flag, which is not necessarily a bad one, but they've never done it before, right? So just a lack of experience already indicates to me that there are things that you just don't know. Again, that's not a bad thing because that's why you're here. That's why you contact us, at least for some. And for me, that just tells me that we're going to have to do a lot more work on the front side, really educating, not just about the process, but educating about what you're getting into and making sure that the client is making, not only a calculated risk, but that they're making an informed decision about what they're doing.
Okay.
I think the second flag that I see, which is probably more of a cautionary tale, is that they come to us and they say, well, we're negotiating this contract, what's called usually a PSA, purchase and sale agreement. But, we have, we're close to getting this finalized, but then we're going to have 10 days, some ridiculously short window of time where they're saying we've got 10 days to get all this stuff submitted. And that's already a flag for me because I'm like, well, that tells me you don't know what you're doing. And it tells me that you have no facility with the process because it's going to probably take 10 days just to gather the initial set of documents from all of the different parties who are integral to this in order to make this go. And certainly if someone is coming to us with a new deal, like a ground up construction, and they say, well, we're going to get this, under contract. We've got this land that we've got under contract, and then we're going to go to HUD, and 30 days later, we're going to get this thing rolling. It's not going to happen, right? So I think there's just there's a sense of timing and a sense of just propriety and knowing how the process works. That's always kind of a clue to me that there may or may not be folks who are versed in what they're doing, and frankly, it's always a risk for someone to say, we don't know what we're doing and we don't want to listen because we think this is how it's done. Now, on the flip side, Evan, to cut, just to push this along.
Yeah.
If someone comes to us and they say, we've done 10 of these and we know how this goes. So there's no reason why you, Terry, and your team, Terry, can't get this done in 5 days. I hate when people tell us, when they try
how long something's going to take for you.
Yeah, exactly. Or, they're essentially out lawyering the lawyers, right? And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. And so that's probably not going to be a good fit. But those are flags for us.
Well, what's the most common way clients accidentally sabotage their HUD deal before they even submit it? Is it just by choosing the wrong entity or partner, or is there more to it?
Well, that's part of it. I think part of the sabotage is structuring the deal in a way that it introduces complexity that doesn't need to be there. So there's and not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but there's a process in tax law called 1031 exchanges. There's nothing in that would bar it from the HUD program, for example. But it makes the deal a lot more complicated. And certainly if you're doing the more elevated kind of exchange, which is called a reverse 1031 exchange, man, I'm always saying, are you sure you need to do it this way? I mean, I'm not your tax lawyer, I'm not your CPA, but are you sure you needed to do it this way? And anytime someone is so strident, they say, no, it has to be done this way. Well, then that tells me I'm saying, okay, well, how quickly do you need this done? Well, I need this done tomorrow. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. So two things can't be true at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you want to do this sort of this overly complex thing, this overly sophisticated thing, then just understand that that's going to take more time by dint of the process. And when clients are just unrealistic about what that means and not really marrying those two basic principles together, you are engaging in a form of self sabotage. I think the other, one of the other pieces that I see quite often is when we see development teams who are just not aligned.
Hmm.
So if it's a new construction deal, the architect's not talking to the general contractor, and the general contractor's not talking to the owner, and the owner's not talking to their partners. Man, that is a recipe for all sorts of crazy. and invariably, sabotage is going to
Mhm.
creep into that process.
Mm. Terry, let's talk about exposure. How does ownership structure affect personal risk, institutional confidence, and even investor appetite?
Okay, this is liability 101. Okay. Um, so there was a deal that came across my desk where someone who shall not be mentioned said that they were buying an apartment complex that had HUD financing on it. And my first question was, okay, well, what's the entity? Like, how are you structuring this? How are you going to hold
Hmm.
title? And their answer was, oh, just me. I said, "What do
Wow.
you mean, just you?" And they said, "Oh, it's me, and my wife probably will have a little bit of it too, so it's just us." And I said,
Mm.
"You really don't want to structure this in the way that you are personally owning something." And they
Hmm.
could not understand why that was the case until a few conversations. And I don't mean to be obtuse or in any way to disparage anyone and their thought process, but the
Right.
real problem with doing that is imagine the amount of liability that you're incurring personally. If someone has a slip and fall on your property, they're not going to sue the owner. Well, they're going to sue the owner of the complex, and guess who that is?
You.
That's the person individually,
Hmm.
which means everything you individually own is subject to attachment or seizure or judgment or anything if it doesn't go the way you want it to go. So
Wow.
one of the first things that you want to do is make sure that you're putting these assets into what's called a single purpose or a single asset entity, so that if anything ever does go wrong, they're limited to whatever assets are in that particular entity, not you globally, and not you in terms of anything else that you have personally or in other interests. So these are fundamental questions from the very start of how you do it. I think one of the other things is, particularly if you're doing a HUD deal, and this is not unique just to HUD. A lot of banks will require the same thing.
Hmm.
They don't like fractional ownership. So it's like, you can have fractional ownership, like maybe up the chain, but if Evan LLC is going to own this, then Evan LLC needs to own all of it. It can't be Evan LLC, Terry LLC, and whoever else LLC owning like a third, and a third. That
Right.
gets really cumbersome. So really just kind of understanding kind of the basic framework of how to, structure a basic deal, even if you're buying, a simple investment house
Hmm.
as opposed to an apartment complex. All those things matter. And that's one reason why you should seek out competent help when you're doing these sorts of things.
Hmm. But what about structural mistakes that you've seen that HUD reviewers flag, that maybe they flag immediately?
Yeah, one of the things that we commonly see is when a ownership group, whether it's a partnership or otherwise, they come in and they simply just don't know how to structure a deal, so they make their best guess.
Hmm.
That's always going to be a problem because let's be honest about it. The reviewer at HUD or the attorney at HUD, they see hundreds of these transactions, over whatever period of time you want to say.
Hmm.
They're familiar with what these things look like. So anytime you give them something that's a departure significantly from what they've normally seen,
Right.
well, guess what? Probably going to raise a flag or two. Probably going to raise a set of questions. So not having a fully baked sense of where the sweet spot is and where the lane through which these deals run, that's a problem. And I think, other than just, those kinds of basic parameters of what a deal like this normally looks like, if you are not careful and you want to, let's say, not hide things, but just not disclose certain things that may be relevant, oh man, it's it, I want you to think about when you were, most of us when we were little kids, and if mom said, "Don't go do this thing." So in
Right.
my case, I loved soda growing up. I was like a Coca-Cola like fiend. And so she had to get me to like she had to start regulating how much Coke I was drinking.
Right.
And so like my grandparents were just pushovers, so they would give me pretty much anything I wanted. And I think one day I'd had like four of those like 12-ounce cans of soda.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
my mom found out about it, and I was there was a biological process that was going on that let her know I'd been drinking way too much soda. And so then she said, "Didn't I explain to you?" She didn't
Absolutely.
say it that kindly, but I'm I'm,
No.
I'm cleaning this up for purposes of the podcast. Didn't I explain to you you're not supposed to drink but one soda a day?
Absolutely.
It was far worse when it was revealed to her that I had gone against her wishes or tried to hide something from her, as opposed to just me being clean or coming clean from the start. And that's kind of what it's like in the HUD context too. It's always better to disclose preemptively and prospectively, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's not relevant. I mean, there are lots of times we disclose things and they say, "Well, we don't care about
Mm-hmm.
that." And there's no harm, no foul. But if there's a situation where there is something that they deem material that wasn't disclosed, then it's like anything else. They're gonna judge everything about a file and everything about a process and everything about you, the client, as negatively and harshly and with as much scrutiny as they probably can.
Mm. I had a similar story with some Twizzlers, but that's neither here nor there. It wasn't good. My dad said you could have. It was a big old bucket of Twizzlers. He said, you could only have this many Twizzlers, and then I took more than I was supposed to take. And I'm telling you, to this day, I still think he went in and counted individually how many Twizzlers were left in there, or he either did it or he called my bluff. He's like, "Did you take some Twizzlers?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Yes, you did." He goes, "Get upstairs." I was like, "Oh my God, it's over, Terry." It's all over. Oh God. But anyways, Twizzlers and
Yeah,
Coke, baby.
yeah.
But personal
Breakfast of
guarantees can be
champions.
a landmine, though. Would you say that? Say that again. What'd you say?
Breakfast of champions.
Yeah, well, for me
Twizzlers
it
and Coke.
was. Personal guarantees can be a landmine. How do smart developers protect themselves and satisfy HUD?
Yeah. The great thing about the HUD program, and it doesn't matter if it's a new construction or if it's a TPA, like an assumption, an acquisition. One of the great things about these programs is it's non-recourse, and for non-lawyers, it just means that there is no personal liability on these particular loans, which is one of the best things that you can say about engaging these processes. So if you go through the process and you're approved, and they like your transaction or they like your deal, you essentially get a 35, in some case, if it's a new construction, a 40-year note from construction to permanent financing where there is no personal guarantee required. You don't have to
Mm,
put up any sort of personal liability. Now, there are things that are called something that's called a Section 50 carve out, and what that means is you cannot disclaim bad boy acts. So, for example, if the regulatory agreement on a deal says you can't sell this property without HUD's approval, and you go and sell it, then you can't come back after when they find out about it and say, I have no personal liability. That doesn't work. So there's a carve out for those personal bad boy acts that is an act of malfeasance, and so you can't disclaim that. But the point that I'm getting at here is the program is valuable in that way. If you're doing anything though in the space of commercial real estate or multifamily real estate, what you want to do is obviously minimize those personal guarantees as much as possible. So imposing kind of limits, whether those are monetary limits or time limits or something, so that you're not exposing everything in your life and everything in your portfolio to some single act of either malfeasance or just bad things happening. Sometimes the market just crashes. Sometimes people fall on a little bit of hard times. In either
right.
way, you don't want those personal guarantees to just come and subvert everything that you're trying to build and do. So really just negotiating those things on the front side so that those things don't come back to bite you in the end. But the folks that we're fortunate to work with, they don't have many of those concerns in the HUD context. If they're doing other work, like with agency loans, what are called Fannie and Freddie Mae loans, there are some guarantees that are associated with that, but they try to limit those guarantees as much as they possibly can. And that's to the point of flags. Someone who just goes and does this work without anyone else assisting them through it,
Mm.
they will then commit those kinds of rookie mistakes that they don't need to commit if you just simply had an experienced team of people behind you who said, hey, I would advise against this, or I caution you to do X, Y, or Z.
Hmm. For those ready to graduate from one-off deals to real portfolio, Terry, what mindset and structure shifts are non-negotiable if they're trying to do that?
Man, this is going to be my answer is really going to be about mindset more than anything else. So I've been doing a lot of mindset work lately, and I highly
Mhm.
encourage people to do that. But I read this small little book lately that talks about quantum leaps, and it really is just about like getting in a space mentally where you start expecting other things, bigger things. Now, I don't mean this to sound transcendentalist or anything like that, but the point being here that if you're playing small always, then you're
Right,
probably going to get small results.
right.
In order to play much bigger and scaffold up, like we talked about in previous episodes, you have to surround yourself with people who probably already have scaffold. And you've got to learn some of the things that they've done to get there. So you
Mm.
do your work on the front side, but there's a limit to which that front side work on your own is going to take you where you wish to go. So where that ends, then you've got to go surround yourself with the people who've actually done what you're attempting to do, and you've got to learn from them. So putting yourself in, whether they're real estate investment groups or masterminds or whatever, you've got to get to a place where your vision starts to become a lot bigger than just, hey, I want to go buy, 3 or 4 houses and flip them, to I want to be, a limited investor in this thing or that thing, to I want to go do a deal, to now I want to do 10 deals. And it really just, it's about starting where you are, but it's also about putting yourself in the right rooms and finding the right kind of groups who can help you scaffold in that way. And
Mm.
that, I mean, honestly, that's the one thing that I see that separates kind of the big players from those who aren't. And this, sometimes it's like the mentality of a gambler, but increasingly it's just the mindset of a champion.
Wow. Well said. Now, Terry, you've structured more than just real estate deals. You've built a legal practice that's intentionally lean, niche, and designed around your values. Can you speak to how the niche practice gives attorneys a tool to do the same thing, especially when they're tired of chasing the brass ring and want to build something a little more sustainable?
Yeah, unfortunately, we live in a very dichotomized society
Hmm.
that will sometimes lead us to conclude that you either have to make a lot of money or you have to basically take a vow of poverty and live on, subsistence wages.
Yeah.
There's a path that can marry those two. And I believe, just based on my career and based on what we've built here at this firm, I believe that has a lot to do with leading from a place of conviction and value, but it
Hmm.
also means you start from the passion point. Now, everyone's passion is not going to make them money. I'm fortunate to be in a world and in an environment and an industry where that is possible. But you start from the passion place, and then you lead from the values place. And if the passion place is not going to be the thing that gives you money, then you don't like exit the passion. You simply find a way to channel that passion into other accretive things. And
Wow.
for the niche practice, what we try to teach, and what I've tried to be very explicit about, is if you start from the thing that you do best, which is probably the thing you love most, at least professionally,
Right.
there's a way and there is a path to becoming not just the expert in that thing, but to building a life, a practice, a business, and all sorts of enterprises around that one thing. It's much easier to do that when you narrow and get to a place of lean where you can focus on one or two things as opposed to trying to do 10 things. And it's really kind of a classic lesson. You're more likely to do one thing or two things well as opposed to doing 10 things mediocre.
Hmm. Wow. Terry, sir, thank you once again.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you. And that's a wrap on Blueprint to Billions. If you're structuring your next multifamily deal and want to get it right from the foundation up, visit terrybrunerlaw.com to connect with Terry. And if you're a lawyer ready to step out of the traditional mold and build a niche law firm that actually fits your life, not just your resume, explore Terry's course, The Niche Practice, at thenichepractice.com. Don't forget to review, like, subscribe, and share this information if you found it helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.